Good evening. Welcome to Caffe Lena Poetry. Thanks for coming out on a rainy March night. This is not a pleasant night to be out, but I appreciate you guys coming here. We have a great looking crowd. We're here to start off by hearing Jay Rogoff's going to read some of his poetry, so let's hear it for Jay. Before the show, I was mentioning to people that I forget things up here a lot. Every month I say I'm going to say my name, and I never do. So I'm Carol Grazer. Welcome to Caffe Lena Poetry. I'm going to start off with a poem to kick off poetry night. This is by Rajiv Mohabir. It's called Prayer. I invite you back, dear wildness, dear unfathomable, formless universe of expansion. You alap and scat of tongue and throat, come seed me. My ground I prepared, ready for divinity. Make day of my night, revolution in my field. Come burn fallow grass and mustard alike. And I will string your each flame about my neck until you flare into me, and I, like you, burn beyond recognition. Okay, so we do have an online crowd watching this, and some from far away. Jay has friends all over the world, so let's give a huge round of applause. Let them know how many people came out here to support this night. There's a lot of you here. Thank you. That was very good. Okay, so Jay Rogoff has published 7 books of poetry. His newest book is a collection, new and selected poems. It's called Loving in Truth. It's published with Louisiana State University Press. His new book is Becoming Poetry, Poets and Their Methods, which is a book of literary criticism, and he received the Louis P. Simpson Award for Outstanding Literary Criticism. He's also like a wonderful member of our poetry community. He's very generous. He's a wonderful teacher. He's referred readers to this series, which has helped our series along, and I am looking forward to sitting back and enjoying a reading by Jay Rogoff.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for that introduction. That was great. Carol Grazer, you know, is the patron saint of poetry in Saratoga Springs. And so, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out on this wet evening, and hello to all the people who might be watching or listening from afar, and to all the ships at sea. I'm going to begin with a poem called Mid-Air, and I'd like to dedicate my reading of this to the memory of Stuart Bardo, who died on January 23rd, a wonderful poet and great loss to our community generally and to poetry in particular. Mid-Air. It's a villanelle, so you'll hear refrains that will repeat throughout the poem. Mid-Air. A dance that Mid-Air. A dance that ends in mid-air doesn't end. The stage blacks out, but there's no curtain call. For even if the curtain should descend, the dancers, turned to shadows, still extend their breathless steps behind the fabric wall. The dance that ends in mid-air cannot end, for Orpheus, bound for a distant land, bearing his torch into the lightless hall, where even if the curtain should descend, eye losing eye, hand suddenly seeking hand, the glancing blow of tragedy won't stall the dance that ends midair. It cannot end all gravity, the dancer's upright friend, who sets them leaping, keeping us in thrall. Then, even if the curtain should descend on our performance, looking back, we send our bodies forward, leaping to a fall, a dance that ends midair and doesn't end, not even when the curtain must descend. Thank you. I'm going to stay with the dance theme for another poem. This one is inspired by a ballet, and the ballet is about a poet and his muse. And the muse in this ballet takes the form of a mysterious woman who is a sleepwalker throughout the whole dance. This is called Somnambula. What a party. Brocaded ladies, their bodices flirtatious as armor, the air exploding in sequins and thick as narcissus liquor. What slender promise for the poet. Morose, romantic, believing in nothing, not even, it seems, poetry. When down from a garret, a tower, down among the jeweled finery, down from dreams wearing nearly nothing, a nightgown, a shift, down from asylum, she lights, candle-laden, among the living. No breath stirs her flame that even the wind can't extinguish, yet it is flame. It would singe. It would translate, helpless to do otherwise, a moth to ash. If you turned her gently by her visionary hand, she'd spin on point endlessly, almost. If you twined in her limbs and pressed against her night-gowned body, if this could be a body and not an apparition, a ghost, if this were no dream, the hazard of this occupation, this precarious craft, in the teeth of the evidence, I'd commit to her this nightgown, this slip, this sylph, in her unnatural strength, worth, well, to dance like that, like no one. I'd be carried by her effortlessly up her tower, up over the jeweled, gaping crowd, the poet committed, a glimmer in the air, a flicker in the night. Farewell. Well, I'm going to read, since winter seems to be gone, I'm going to read a poem about the season that we are all greatly anticipating, by which, of course, I mean baseball season. And it occurred to me long ago that no scholar has done justice to the remarkable parallels between the game of baseball and the novels of Jane Austen. So this is called Jane Austen, Inventor of Baseball. There is an epigraph from Northanger Abbey. The hero of the book is a young woman named Catherine Morland. It was not very wonderful that Catherine, who had by nature nothing heroic about her, should prefer cricket, baseball, riding on horseback, and running about the country at the age of 14 to books. How to learn the signs, how to decide to commit, how to know mere manners from true ardor, how to take a pitch, how to hang in, how to foul off Wickham's trick deliveries, how to connect with Darcy's devastating curve or Mr. Knightley's high hard one, how to dust yourself off from a brushback, how to parse the rules to your advantage, how to plot a strategy, how to work out the crucial late walk under fading light with the moon rising over the fence and nightingales singing their anthem, how to protect your lead, how to hit and run, how to rally when visitors keep chipping away, how to play defense, how to guard against the steal, when to play for one and when to try for two, when to sacrifice, how to negotiate long-term contracts, how to determine if and when it's safe to come home, how to read. Okay, and while we're making travesties of English literature, this is a more serious poem, actually. It was inspired by a visit to Samuel Taylor Coleridge's cottage in the west of England in a little village called Nether Stowey. We came out from visiting it, and there was a pub across the street called the Ancient Mariner. And my wife said, "Oh, that's where he got the idea for the poem." Right? But this is This makes use not of the Ancient Mariner, but of Frost at Midnight, which I think is my favorite poem of his. There is a line in the middle where he suddenly turns to his infant son who is sleeping and says, "My babe, so beautiful, it thrills my heart with tender gladness thus to look at thee." And it's just because of all what's built up to it, it's just a killer of a couple of lines. Anyway, Nether Stowey. Dear Coleridge, I'm a stranger in your house, and do not think of you as lunatic or some nut nodding off to opium, but a man feeling too keenly the touch of other human beings who needed air, cold air around him to anesthetize his overloaded senses just enough to get on with the grim business of living. I'm shivering to be breathing in your parlor, this small room where, sitting in colloquy with birds singing bower songs, leaves blazing, ice lengthening in the winter moonlight, you all conspired to bless your son, sleeping, inexplicable as a foreign land, love offering the principle of translation. The sad past melts away in the sublime cold. Dorothy, this is Dorothy Wordsworth, Wordsworth's sister. Dorothy tells how you walked the knife edge of Helvellyn, on either side a sheer drop, at night, in shoes with licorice soles. In childlessness, I hear your pen enact those words, my babe, so beautiful, scratching the midnight silence like a record groove's promise of Mozart. The missing film that fluttered on your fire, I've loaded in my camera, the little chamber I used to violate your intimacy. Make me a companionable form. As much a stranger as on barging in, I steal away, hearing your strange, nocturnal words collect, turning my head sadder, stranger still. A while ago, I wrote a series of peculiar love sonnets, sequence called Venera, and I think I will read two of those. Each of these has a title called The Something, right? So this one is called The Light. The gold lights created in the east trees, abrupt against trunks, lovely in the limbs looming like X-ray bones. In these rooms, new light makes everything antique. The brass bed, oak dresser, last night's whiskey, suffuses the rediscovered world like gilt combs combing gold hair, winnowing from my dreams streaks of sheer light whose falling mess of rays eliminates the need for clothes. White light at day's height batters us from far above the trees, wanting nothing to do with skin's effusions or healthy glow, but like night, indifferent to the colors of my love, the gold light that dances around her bones. And this one is called The Mirror, and those of you who are into art and museums might recognize some of the imagery as being stolen from Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini double portrait, which is in the National Gallery in London. The Mirror. If marriage, as a mirror of our world, gives us the ardent pair, blood-red bedclothes, funkily fragrant, garden-lit windows, wood clogs, a little terrier, what world does she reflect? What message does the gold leaf back of her translucent skin disclose? Speculation spreads like a cellist's knees. She's like no other, mirroring each mere word she reads, so what she reflects is mystery. I ache for her to apprehend me, perfected in her jewel's white light, stupid as a star, or to swing her eyes suddenly up at me. I'd enter their reflection, her deep mirror. That's the world to live in, all in her head. Here's another sonnet, actually. Till I was 8 years old, I lived in Jackson Heights, Queens, and out the window of my bedroom, when I was very little, you could see the Empire State Building. And my father and I had a ritual in which he would take me around the room, and I would say goodnight to all the pictures on my wall, but I would also say goodnight to the Empire State Building. And I miss it. This is called Good Night. Every night, Dad brought me to the casement, and I'd say goodnight to the Empire State Building, radiant in its raiment, and enfolding me in its watchful spotlights, vigilant as an angel. Good night, building, pliant in Daddy's grip, my torn eyeless bear dangling. I'd curl up, the Empire's steeple guarding the watchful father and the sleeping infant. I dream of him, his home by the sea, black waves attacking and retreating. My backyard stream chuckles in summer, boils in winter. In winter, surf sounds pound his bedroom window. He wakes to no light falling on his ocean. I dream this while my stream rushes on. I'm going to try out a couple of new poems on you, and then come back and read three more from Loving in Truth. Those are all from my new and selected book called Loving in Truth, which is available out there. I'll be there in the intermission, okay, along with some other books of mine. Shameless commerce here. These are the first time I'm reading these two poems, although I've been working on them for quite a while. I grew up at a time when many kids were obsessed with space travel and NASA. Of course, there were the great science fiction films, or the actually mostly terrible science fiction films of the 1950s. Destination Moon and those things, which you could see 12 times a week on WOR's $1 Million Movie. But I grew up with my friends obsessed with NASA and space flight, and at 10, we all wanted to be astronauts, and my friend Richie and I would pretend that we were astronauts, and the New York Times would print the transcripts. When Jim McDivitt and Ed White did the first American spacewalk in 1964, the Times actually printed a transcript of their transmissions to each other, and Richie and I would read this back and forth to each other incessantly as though we were a little play. So this is called Spacewalk. Age 10, I played McDivitt and Rich Ed White, our maiden spacewalk, Project Gemini. Crowded hip to hip and yearning to fly, we read the NASA transcript. Ed, get inside. White had drunk deep of floating. He later died in the Apollo launchpad fire, dawn sky flaming beneath the moon's ignorant eye that wooed us into trading day for night. Richie became an out-there therapist, regressing patients through centuries of past incarnations. Who knows if it's real, he told me, but it seems to give some hope to my most hopeless cases. Richie swiped his senile dad's life savings. He went to jail. When cancer took him on his final spacewalk, this post, "I've left the capsule," appeared on Facebook. Oh, thank you, Joe. Just finished today. Let's see, in Berlin, at the Jewish Museum, which is an extraordinary building designed by Daniel Libeskind, at one point I was stopped short by a display case in which there is a bolt of electric yellow fabric. And of course, the fabric is printed with the stars that Jews were legally required to wear on their chests during the Nazi regime. So this is called A Bolt in Berlin. Star-crossed The yellow fabric huddles on its roll, a toxic Torah scroll, a searchlight shining dark, synthetic miracle cloth tattooed in black Gothic with bleak black letter logic, shrill in the stark, sterile arc of a glass museum case. A steam-powered loom spat out this fluorescence. Every yellow flower elbows for living room as in a subway car. Trained human hands made scissors zig and zag, chopping the jagged stars, the height of ghetto fashion. Each six-pointed florid rag tore a hole in the field. Each poison yellow shield of David stitched in haste on a baggy pinstriped suit coat, on last year's winter dress, on a daughter's threadbare skirt, or a boy's outgrown wool shirt, sewn pointedly in place, where anyone might sight on a heart under duress, hammering thereunder. A solitary word blooms on every star, J-U-D-E, an absurd black-lettered tetragrammaton, a legal parody. This bolt stands for law like lightning on a sleeve when gunshots pass for thunder and burning for belief. Those who wore the stars rose beyond Mars and Jupiter, where they shine in shadowy memory, their yellow constellation invisible to the eye, naked as history and cursed as imagination. I'm trying to decide if that poem sounds better than it is. I'm not sure. Another somewhat war-related poem. Down at Union College, probably many of you have been there, the Memorial Chapel, which is over 200 years old, is also the setting for a wonderful chamber music series, or used to be. I'm not sure that it still is. And it is a memorial chapel, and behind the players is this large tablet that's carved with the names of all the men, and they are all men, from Union College who were killed in the Great War, the World War I. And going there week after week, and looking at all these names, you kind of feel as though you're getting to know these guys. This is called Memorial Chapel. We've arrived expressly to be transported while we sit stock still in the college chapel's 1800 federal architecture, witnessing music. Schubert, Bach, Prokofiev, Shostakovich, week in, week out, making this room a spare, sparse paradise, a garden where sound waves loiter rounded to crystal. Now, for instance, Beethoven's Grosse Fugue in B-flat major scrolls from the quartet's guts, while listening, I study again the names carved back of the players. Marble-clad memorial to the Great War dead, the undergrads and alumni who got butchered giving Europe democracy it didn't desire and lie transported off overseas. The Grosse Fugue spreads thick, deciduous layers, oral flavors, ash, ambrosia, in living ears unstopped with the earth, unlike the ears of Wesley D. Carker, Luther Hager, William W. Waiteskill, Herbert Rankin, Talbot Carmichael, Alan Ashton, Kennedy Conklin, Walcott Calkins, Alwyn G. Levy, Howard Thorne, and dozens more stone deaf to the music, deafer than a post, than Beethoven. College guys now deafer than when they sat in boring lectures and dreamt that bloody high romance, imagined those French jeunes filles, but found nothing transporting them, no returning, even as cargo. Two more. I'll conclude with two short poems from a series that's called The Penny Poems, written in honor of my wife. And we have a place up in the Adirondacks, and this is based on a kind of true encounter. It's called Penny and the Bear. Yes, yes. God, I should have a request reading or something. All right, Penny and the Bear. When Penny met the bear along the path, the interview left little chance for banter. 15 green feet off, she watched it rear on thick hind legs, a full 6 feet, its teeth bared, snout periscoping around to sniff the strange, suddenly populated air. Her brain madly rummaged through TV nature programs. Should she drop flat, rehearsing death? For that she felt unready. Should she scream? Her voice had fled. The merest human racket lay beyond her. Should she loom gigantic, hoisting high overhead her hooded jacket? She couldn't move a muscle. A stratagem that signaled it to mosey off this time. And this final poem is called Tortugas, and it takes it, which is Spanish for turtles, you probably know, and it takes place in Seville on Corpus Christi Day when they have a big pageant and floats going through the streets. You probably, do you know about the death of Aeschylus, the Greek playwright? Yes? No? Aeschylus, he was about 70 years old, and he was totally bald, and he was walking along the beach, and supposedly, the story goes, an eagle carrying a turtle mistook his head for a rock and dropped the turtle on his head. It's one of, and you know, Aeschylus, there's not a single joke in Aeschylus, and so it's a wonderfully tragicomic end to Aeschylus's life. It's wonderful. I mean, he's a great playwright, but yeah. So this is called Tortugas. The body of Christ, oiled and dressed in luscious robes for the feast day and paraded through the street, left all the hungry host knocked out, save the toddler wriggling in her papa's arms, reaching hands out for your breast. Her father blushed and laughed. Tortugas, he said into his girl's wide eyes. The turtles printed on your dress or hiding under its silk disguise? Christ hurried past us to get nailed, a blue note in this comedy, whose other players, safely shelled like turtles, stare in sympathy. When Mary nurses Christ, her eyes look down, disguising all she knows, comic relief cross-dressed as death. Lie down, darling, while I praise Tortugas with my shorter breath as long grass spins our last disguise, before we're clocked like Aeschylus by turtles hurtling from the blue. Thank you.